Welcome, everyone. I'm Dr. Basil Considine. I'm here from the ACU Online Writing Center, and today we're doing a lunchtime installment of EdD in Progress, Annotated Bibliographies, and Practice Areas. This is one of our targeted webinars that walks students through particular assignments in the EdD course sequence. You are certainly more than welcome to attend and participate if you're in another class where you have to write an annotated bibliography. Just be aware that different annotated bibliography assignments often have different requirements about whether or not you need an introduction, if there are specific sections they want you to include and label, and other things like that. But the general principles are applicable to any annotated bibliography assignment. It just happens that we will be focusing on two specific assignments in the EdD sequence. If you're new to the ACU Online Writing Center, we work with students throughout their process. There are many different points of contact, of which there are webinars such as this. You can make appointments with us to send in your paper for feedback. You can make appointments to talk with us in real time, and different mechanisms for all of that, plus more content on our website. So let's talk through those in more detail. So most students work with us through what we call asynchronous appointment. An asynchronous appointment is one that's not in real time, which means that if, for example, you made an appointment with me for 11:30 p.m. on Wednesday night, what that means is you would want to upload the draft of your paper for feedback, however complete it is, by 11:30 p.m. on Wednesday. But then you could promptly go to bed and we'd send you feedback within 24 hours. So you don't have to match up the schedules. But if you had something that you thought, I'm probably going to have a series of questions, I'm going to want to ask for some explanations and have more of a dynamic discussion, then you might send us an email to onlinewritingcenter@acu.edu and request a phone or Zoom appointment, especially if you're trying to figure out how to make something look right in Microsoft Word, say, while also meeting the assignment requirements. We have sample papers, there's course paper templates, blog posts, and a complete catalog of all of our webinar recordings on the Online Writing Center website. Again, the process for an asynchronous appointment, you want to schedule an appointment. This will be through the WC Online system. And then by the time that rolls around, if you log into ACU Online, in your appointment form, there'll be a link to the Writing Center Canvas site to upload your paper, and then we'll send you your feedback. We have a lot of webinars coming up this term. I've presented a small selection of those that are coming up in the next 2 weeks. We have plenty more coming up, and you can see the complete schedule on our website. Here's a small selection of some of the webinars we have in the EdD in Progress series. There are 14 more that I couldn't list for space reasons that are all categorized, so you can check if you're taking the course what we have and what we have coming down the road. So with that, let us go ahead and talk about our main focus for this week. So if you are taking Leadership 724, this week, week 1, you have your Annotated Bibliography 1 assignment due. And then next week, there's the follow-up Annotated Bibliography 2 assignment. And so we'll explore the Annotated Bibliography genre in general. We'll look at those 2 specific assignments, and we'll finish with talking about how to go through the process of outlining and drafting your responses. So let's start by delving into annotated bibliographies as a genre. So what, first of all, is an annotated bibliography for? Well, it's a particular genre of writing that's designed to present the most relevant details from a curated list of sources related to a specific topic or problem. And what you end up identifying as being most relevant is going to depend on what you're trying to do, which is usually a specific problem that you're trying to solve from a particular perspective. If you're, say, trying to address employee retention, what you do on the ground could be very different if you are, say, a colleague versus a department chair versus a district superintendent versus, say, a fundraiser for the district. So by providing your perspective, for determining the purpose of your specific annotated bibliography, you get to determine what are the most relevant details for you and other people who are investigating this. Because it's such a specialized aid, they're written to be very concise, and they're highly selective based on the topic and purpose for what is and isn't included. They're not at all intended to be exhaustive, and there's limited comparison between articles. You might think of it as kind of a traveler's guide where you could buy a whole book on, say, Mammoth Cave and spend days and days in there. But in a traveler's guide, it would give some key things. Okay, where is it? What are some of the highlights? What are the features? How do you get there? And in the same way, an annotated bibliography entry gives you a selected set of information. Now, there's a basic formula that goes into the annotated bibliography. You first state the unifying purpose or theme. Sometimes this is as simple as just giving the title. Sometimes it is giving a paragraph of introduction. Then you have the annotations themselves, which consist of the reference information, just as you would have it appear in your reference section in an APA paper. This is usually referred to in shorthand as a citation in the instructions for these assignments. And then after that, you'll include a summary of the most pertinent details, again, for your specific purpose or theme. Now, some assignments, especially late in the degree sequences, you might also be asked to give some critical analysis or big picture discussion where you would have comparison between the articles and talk about what this means or suggests collectively. Only add that if the assignment instructions and specified to do so. And I believe the assignments that we're looking at today do not include a separate critical analysis section. And I mean separate in the sense of looking at the works discussed as a whole. Now, many of these do ask that you critically analyze specific articles, and that might be in the context of analyzing them for strengths and weaknesses and limitations and how the findings might be applied and things like that. We'll delve into that more as we look at the specific assignment. So, for example, if I was writing an annotated bibliography about anti-bullying practices at the high school level, well, there are a couple different ways that I could look at this, and probably a few different types of sources I might be looking at. And so I might choose for the 5 articles, and they can be things other than articles, but for most of these assignments, it's peer-reviewed journal articles. For the articles I choose, I'm going to cluster them by topic. So I'm going to discuss 2 meta-studies, so I'll just label them with headings, meta-study 1, meta-study 2, etc., and so on and so forth. So about that reference entry, this should look basically the same as you'd have an entry in your references page, except that many of the assignments, not all of them, but many of them will ask that you include a link to the source in the ACU library catalog, the so-called permalink that you see at the bottom here. Permalinks do not exist in core APA style, which is why we don't normally bring them up. But here it's to check to make sure that you are learning how to use ACU's library resources and access things. The reason it's not part of the core APA style is that the link that you see at the bottom of the entry, the doi.org URL, that is itself designed to always take you to wherever that article is living. So even if the journal closes and it gets bought out by some other publisher, the DOI should still point you to wherever that moves to. But for many annotated bibliography assignments, you're asked to include a permalink. So if that's the case, just copy that from the library website. And the process is pretty simple for creating this. You want to go to the ACU library, perform a search, find an article, use the Cite button, and copy and paste it into your Word document and make sure it's correctly formatted. And in fact, let's take a moment and do exactly that now. So I'm going to change my screen sharing here. So you should now be seeing I've got the ACU library page pulled up here. And if you might give me a suggestion for a specific topic that you're interested in, and then I will use that as an example. You can either type it in the chat window or send me a direct message. And I have a something someone has sent me about rural teacher retention. If you can give me a region, that would be even more helpful. The library catalog appears to be down at the moment. One moment, let me check that. All right, well, in the interest of time, I'm going to show you a similar library catalog because the basic functions are going to be the same. It'll just look a little bit different. So I'm going to the Boston University library catalog. I happen to be a double alum of Boston University. And you'll see that it has many of the same facets. The library homepage has links to some specialized things, but also this one single search thing for looking through everything in the catalog, just as we have at ACU. So I'm going to search here for rural teacher retention. And this doesn't look exactly like the ACU catalog, but it has all the same functions we're talking about. And so let's say that we are looking for something that is a peer-reviewed journal article, which most annotated bibliography assignments are asking you to find. So in the library catalog, you'll see an option here for peer-reviewed articles there. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to select that. In the ACU catalog, these happen to be on the left-hand side rather than the right. And then most these require that you sample recent research. What is recent research? Well, that's generally agreed that material from the last 5 years is usually recent research. If we're talking, say, US politics, 5 years might seem a very long time ago, but in scholarly literature, usually 5 years is a commonly accepted thing. Now, if you're preparing to write a dissertation or a doctoral project, and you are thinking that you might want to use these for your dissertation or doctoral project, then I would say let's go even more recent than 5 years, and give yourself a year or two's buffer so you're not going to be having to go replace older sources. So let's go ahead and we'll search for things published since 2019. And let's see just how we're doing here in terms of numbers. All right, now I still have 5,500, so that's going pretty well. I'm just going to check peer-reviewed articles and see that we still have 2,200 there. Great. And so now I'm going to start looking at this and saying, I can be a little bit more particular. Let's say that I'm searching for Montana. Now, if you don't find something in Montana, you might say, okay, well, what states are pretty similar? And that might involve, say, looking at Idaho or Wyoming or another state that borders it that has a similar character. So again, I'm going to go ahead and turn on the peer-reviewed articles there. And I'm also going to go ahead and restrict, I only want to see applications from 2019 to the present. And so our number has dropped significantly. Not so much that I want to go ahead and read all 58 things that pop up, but enough that I might look at this and say, okay, you know what? This is a good start, and let me go ahead and read some of these here. So in this case, this one is a multi-site case study. Great. Let's go ahead and open this up here. And you can see that there's a citation button here. I click on that. and it gives me information that I can copy. Now, this is with APA 7th edition selected. I can tell you that there's some additional formatting you'd need to do in APA style because we need to turn this to H period, this to S period, change this to sentence case, and add that this is a dissertation and what school this came from. But in general, it will save me some time to copy and paste there. And it all depends on who entered this data, because some of these had people who manually entered everything perfectly, and a lot of times it's done by an algorithm and not so perfect. So let's say we go to this one here and we look for the citation button. And defaulting to APA style, and again, we'd have to do a little bit of reformatting here, but it would still save us a lot of time. That permalink and just gives us a link to the catalog. BUs are formatted slightly different, but it's exactly the same idea as those easy proxy links that I showed you earlier. All right, back to the slide deck here. You can see these screenshots are from the ACU catalog. We've got that cite button on the right-hand side and the permalink button. All right, let's take a look at the specific assignments that we're going to be focusing on for the rest of our time here. So again, these are from Leadership 724. One of them is due this coming Monday. The other is due the Monday after that. So the assignment instructions for the first one begin with a little preamble. One foundation of quality research is thorough familiarity with a scholarly conversation in a focused research or practice area. A common way to explore and document that knowledge is to construct an annotated bibliography. And then a common way to gain that knowledge from someone else is to read their published annotated bibliography, because there are lots of published annotated bibliography is out there. It's kind of like getting a Cliff Notes guide for key reading. And so there are lots of annotated bibliography articles that get published all the time. If you are looking to get a couple publications and you're a very busy person, I would recommend writing an annotated bibliography or two. It's relatively easy, and if it's about something you're interested in, have to do anyway, might as well be able to get some extra credit for that. All right, let's look at the specific assignment instructions now. Part 1 of the annotated bibliography, meaning the assignment that you're doing right now for week 1, includes a single article to learn the process and attain early feedback. Later, meaning in this case 2 Mondays from now, you will turn in a longer annotated bibliography. In both, you will review pertinent scholarly texts, select the most significant, and annotate them as described or listed below. The articles you select must refer to a topic relevant to leadership and diversity. It will be helpful to look ahead to the literature review due in Module 5, because your annotation can serve as a starting point for that assignment. So that's one of those heads-up notices saying, hey, some of this stuff is coming back. You can make your life easier if you plan it so that the reading that you're doing for this assignment will be something that you can reuse for that later one. All right, any article that you're analyzing for this assignment, you need to send your instructor a copy. So if you want to go ahead and download that when you're reading it, and there's a specific instruction to use the ACU library to obtain your sources, and I'm just going to check if that's back online. Not at the moment. Looks like it's an issue with EBSCO, so it's the hosting company we use for some of the library stuff. All right. Choose one empirical study, a research report from a peer-reviewed scholarly journal written within the last 5 years. Do not include book chapters, books, editorials, white papers, trade magazine articles, or other non-peer-reviewed sources. The most common mistake is to select an article that is not a research article. I will go ahead and add that a second common mistake for this assignment is to select a dissertation, and it's not an article, so it doesn't qualify under that thing. But also, people get confused sometimes because a dissertation has to be read and approved by at least 3 people, and so it is kind of partial peer review. It's not as not the particular process involving external peer review readers that a peer reviewed journal article goes through. So it must be an article, should be a research article from the last 5 years that describes the methods and findings, things that were used to come to the conclusion. And that's pretty much it. You get the rubric, which gives us the information about how long and what specific elements are required to go in this annotation. And we see, all right, so this first one is saying things we've covered before should be a peer-reviewed research article from the last 5 years, APA format for the citation, and make sure it has a diversity and leadership focus. All right. And then you're supposed to give an unbiased, by which we mean objective, 150-word summary that includes describing the study type, the purpose, the research questions, the methodology, the findings, and the research statement of limitations. This should not involve quotation. This is supposed to be all of your paraphrasing and summary. And there's a specific note that it should be written in your own words. So again, don't quote, and avoid opinion. So be objective and unbiased. Then you're also asked to include an evaluation section that addresses the study's strength and validity, including publication date, references, and depth of analysis. So this is essentially when you analyze the article and you say, okay, well, here's what's good and here's what makes the results look like they're meaningful and applicable elsewhere. And then just a 50-word statement. It's probably just going to be a couple sentences that explain the article's relevance or potential usefulness to your intended research question. So again, you want to be seeking out things that align with what you are already doing, what you're already interested, what you are considering working on for your EdD dissertation. And the same applies if you were, say, a DNP student going down the doctoral project track. It's helpful to align these assignments with what you have to do already. So the more that you tilt this towards your topic, the less work you'll have to do when you get down to specifically writing the dissertation. Now, if we were to look through the instructions for assignment 2, for the Annotated Bibliography 2 assignment, you'll find that it's almost exactly the same. In large part, the only real change of note will be very clear if we look at the rubric, because the rubric tells us that we're supposed to do more here. So hold on. Let's go and look at the assignment here. I think what I'm going to talk about will make a little bit more sense in context. So I'm changing my screen sharing to go back to the web browser here. And so you should now see I've got the Annotated Bibliography 2 assignment pulled up. And so here are the key differences. And it's really just these. Rather than choose one article, it's choose 5, and that they should be empirical studies or scholarly lit reviews. All right, that's basically it. Okay, so let's go ahead and talk about what this means. So if I'm going to summarize Annotated Bibliography assignment number 1, that assignment is to write an annotated bibliography that happens to have exactly one entry, because it's kind of your practice. Annotated Bibliography 2 is saying, okay, do the same thing, except make it 5 entries, 5 annotations, if you will, rather than just one. Okay, that's pretty straightforward. So what will that look like? Well, I'm glad you asked. Because the next thing that we have, and where we'll finish out our time today, is to model some of this in practice through outlining and drafting. So for this next section, I'm going to be using a copy of the APA course paper template that we have available through the Writing Center website, and that you can also download through many of your course websites. I personally will recommend that you go to the Writing Center website because that is where we keep the latest, greatest, most up-to-date copies of this. And this is going to be a big time saver to use this versus setting it up yourself. All right, so I'm grabbing a copy of a template that I'm going to use. And let me go ahead and get that sharing in just a moment. All right, I've got that copy pulled up and you should now be seeing my screen in Word. And the first thing we're going to do is going to title the paper. Now, I sometimes have people writing in saying, hey, how do you feel about this title? I'm trying to capture this idea or that. Something that you should be aware of is that APA style in general emphasizes preciseness and conciseness over variety. So, for example, it is less important for APA style, it is less important that the title be interesting and poetic and so forth versus it just being accurate. So you read it, you know what you're getting. And so for this case, Annotated Bibliography 1 is just fine. Could you title it with something related to what you're researching? Absolutely. But in our case, we don't need that. So I'm just going to go with Annotated Bibliography 1 assignment here, and I can always replace that with something later. All right, I'm going to take out the rest of this text here. And we also get the question, should you have a references section in an annotated bibliography? The answer is usually not. So I say usually not because when you're doing a assignment and for our courses where you're writing an annotated bibliography, almost all the time you're told not to use outside sources. There are cases well into many of the programs where you will essentially write a short essay before or after the annotations, where you discuss how they sit within the literature, and you might be referring to earlier stuff or saying, okay, well, these align with this theory here, and be citing things that you didn't have annotations for, in which case then you would have a separate references section. But for most annotated bibliography assignments, the answer would be no. So I'm just going to take this one out here. All right. Now, if I could have another suggestion for a topic, something that interests you, that will help me customize this next example here. Remember that the instructions say that this should be something that is giving empirical research, and that this is something that will give some insights here. So I'm looking at the instructions specifically for the Annotated Bibliography 1 assignment, and it says it must refer to a topic relevant to leadership and diversity. All right. Now, because the ACU library catalog is still down, we're just going to go ahead and we'll use the Boston University search again. And this particular assignment does not require that you give a permalink. Just check if you're doing another assignment, even another assignment in the program, because some of them do. So let's go ahead and we're just going to start out with a search for leadership and diversity. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to immediately select peer-reviewed. And just make that from, again, we'll go since 2019. Let's update our search. All right, it's still getting an awful lot of results here. That's great. Lots of things to choose from. Remember, you don't need to do all of them. This is not intended to be exhaustive. It's intended to present a curated list or guide to what people working this area might find helpful. So, all right. Let's say that, oops. Let's say that I want to go ahead with that. And I think because BU uses some of the same library type systems that ACU has, I think it might be an issue with the hosting company, because normally there's another thing that's happening there to limit the results. For our purposes, we can use this one here as an example. And again, I'd want to go to citation to get the reference information. And so I'm just going to copy this. And then let's go ahead and set things up. So back to the Word document. So first thing I need to do is to reformat this in APA style rules. Now, since I'm using the paper template, one thing I can do is to go to the styles pane here, and we have a style especially for formatting references in APA style. It won't do all the work, but it'll do some of it to make it have the things it needs. So I'm going to go ahead and select this and apply it to APA reference. You see how we now have that running head here. All right, up next, I need to italicize the journal title and the volume number, that's 12. 2 is the issue number. This is the page range. And you might think that I need to rewrite this in sentence case, but this is actually already in sentence case, because regardless of whether you're in sentence case or title case, you capitalize the first letter of each word or each longer word or important word in sorry, that came out wrong. If it is a proper noun, we're going to be capitalizing the first letters of the word in the name. So American College of Sports Medicine, that's a proper noun. So that's all capitalized, as you see. And the Leadership and Diversity Training Program is a specific program they have. So that's its name. It's a proper noun. So that's capitalized. So this is actually correct here. What we do want to do is to abbreviate these initials, turn these names into initials, make sure that each initial is followed by a period. And there, we've got our first annotation. This particular assignment, well, let's go ahead and take a peek at our rubric. And this particular assignment does not say that we need to have a permalink, so I'm not going to put one in. Will it hurt you if you include one? No, it shouldn't. But because it's not in core APA style and the professor hasn't added it, I would just want to spend any time putting it in because it's not required and shouldn't be part of the grade. All right, so what else might we do? Well, we've got a list of requirements, and the rubric is the best place to look for this list of requirements here. Because if we go back to the slides, we see that we're being asked to give an unbiased summary that has some particular bits of information, give the evaluation and the application statement. Okay, so what's the best way to let the reader know, and by reader I include the person grading this, that you've got these sections? Well, by labeling them here. So let's put on some labels. Now, in this case, if this was part of the week 2 assignment, when you have multiple annotations, we go ahead and assign it a heading like Diversity and Leadership 1, and each article would have another APA Level 1 heading in front of it. Because this is the only one, although you would normally see APA Level 2 headings, mainly flush left after this, let me just write those in. So if this was the week 2 assignment where you're including 5 annotations, these all would be level 2 headings, and then you'd start each paragraph after that. However, since this is the only one, having the separate heading is redundant for the Annotated Bibliography 1 assignment. So we'll take that out. And instead, each of these headings will become an APA Level 1 heading. So just go ahead and select this, click APA Level 1, select APA Level 1, select APA Level 1. All right, and then we've got a list of things that are supposed to be included here. And so I'm going to take these right from the assignment rubric here. So it's a to-do list, if you will, things that you should be writing down in your own words and following this order. And the explanation. Now for the moment, I'm just going to put the word count in parentheses for the headings. I would take that out later, but for now it's helpful to have it. All right, I'm just going to do a little bit of quick formatting so that I can quickly recognize what is part of the paper and what is just notes. All right, so we've got a list of things. So let's take a look at this particular piece of reading here. So I'm going to go back to the library catalog. And let's go ahead and let's go after this new business source complete here, which is a resource that ACU has a subscription to, if I remember correctly. And remember, our first to-do list item is to find out what study type it is. Uh-oh, that's that library catalog thing I mentioned earlier. Let's see if we can get in. There we are. All right, so I have downloaded a copy of this PDF here, which you should now see my sharing on screen. And we want to find out what kind of study they did. And there are a few ways you can go ahead looking at this. And one is to just look for methods and see if it tells you. And then here we come into one of those things that can come up in much of your research. Is it relevant to what you're doing, and does it have the things that you require? Now, we see at the bottom of the abstract says, these efforts are summarized here along with progress, lessons learned, and future plans. So while it may be describing what's going on, this looks less like it might not be the kind of thing that we're looking for. So if you see that, the earlier you can identify that, the sooner you can go and look for something else that does meet your requirements. So I'm going to go back and I'm going to take a look in the library catalog and see, can I find something else that matches what we're looking for here. And if there's a particular type of study that you're looking for, you might even look for that. Like you might search for a case study. And here, okay, so case study, Poland, great. I think this could be something we want. And of course, you'd want to go ahead and get the reference information. And you'll want to make sure so that that is formatted correctly for APA style, which if we go back to the template here, you'll find that we need to switch this into sentence case. So there's actually a tool here where I can change that to lowercase. And there, no retyping required. And we just need to abbreviate that and we're good. Now, a question came up, how do you search a PDF? If you're looking at something that's even vaguely recent, like last 10 years, you can usually do a text search using the find function in your program. I'll show you that in a moment. I mention if it's even vaguely recent research because there's a lot of articles where they went and digitized things from, say, the 1950s. You can find those online, and sometimes they've done a full text transcription, and sometimes they haven't. And if they haven't and it's just images, then this find search may not do anything for you. Let me grab this article here, and then I'll show you the search. All right, now I've gone ahead and I have brought up this article on my computer here. Now, I happen to be using a Mac right now, so I can just press Command F, F for find, and it brings up the search box. If you are on a PC, it'll be Control F, and it'll bring up a similar search box. And this is true whether you're looking at the PDF in your web browser or Adobe Acrobat, or in this case, Apple Preview. So we're looking for, okay, what kind of study is it? Well, it very helpfully tells us in the title and in the abstract that this is a case study. Great. Now, there are a few different types of case studies, so we'll check through this. And I'm just going to make a search for case, and I'm going to follow case with the A space so that it will limit the number of things. And we see, okay, it's only giving us those two matches, but we have this section, method of study, that tells us what they did. And so from this, they were basically doing a case study of the field. So this is a single case study, as opposed to they might have done this search in 2015 and then repeated it in 2016 and then repeated it in 2017. And because they'd have those three different sets of data, then that would have been a multiple case study if they did it. But since they just took one period of, it looks like, about 2 months to collect data, then we'd call this a single case study because it's just one window of time. All right, so back to our assignment document here. So you can just take these, and before you start thinking about what you might be writing in these things, we can just separate these. And in this case, I don't think we need this, so I'm just going to cross it out. And I can say, okay, well, the study type is going to be case study. All right, now purpose statement. All right, let's go back to that article, back to the PDF. And we see that we are looking right now for the purpose. And sometimes they'll tell us exactly that using that term. Other times we go to the introduction and we look and see. And in this case, they say they worded it with aim rather than purpose. Now, these are synonyms, so it's the same thing. But to help make it very clear, when you are writing a paper later on in the program where they ask you to write a statement of purpose or purpose statement, use the word purpose because that's going to be the one that's used in the instructions. But in this case, we see, okay, the aim of the paper is to analyze the usage of diversity management and recruitment process in companies operating in Poland, which signed the diversity charter document. All right, so how would we work this in? Well, the first thing we want to do is to just go ahead and take the text there. We're going to put it in quotation marks so we know, all right, so that's how it reads originally. And now we're going to paraphrase it in our own words. And I'm just going to go ahead and start typing here. All right, the purpose of the study was to explore the purpose of the study was to explore diversity management's role in corporate recruiting in Poland. Is my wording related to the original? Yeah, well, it is after all about the same purpose. But is it the same? No. I've changed a lot of the words, some of the phrasing is different, and that's all we need. So, okay, the purpose of the study was to do blah. Now you can expand on it with additional details from looking at the article. But the intent here is to convey, okay, what was this study trying to do? And we can get a big picture of that in one sentence. All right, research questions. So this is something where, depending on the genre of literature, they may have formal research questions that they list, and as questions, or it may be particular goals, or they're saying we're testing to see if this is effectiveness or not, in which case the question might be, all right, does this work or not? And so we see that they have some objectives as and these objectives we could translate into questions. Let's take a look and see if they use the word question here. And I'm going to do a find search for the word question. Now, as it happens, it's not being used explicitly. And part of that is just the genre. And part of that is that this is a Polish author writing in English. And so they won't necessarily use the same terminology that we might look for and use instinctively ourselves. But again, what are the research questions that they're trying to answer? What are they trying to know essentially? Well, if we look at this here, back to this paragraph here, we see that they had these objectives that you can restate as questions. And so let's grab this and then I'll show you how to do that. And then we'll have to wrap things up for reasons of time. And again, I'm going to go ahead and put that in quotation marks so that it's clear to me that, oh, that is not text I wrote. And what we do here, the study, no, not the study, the article did not include formal or explicit research questions. However, the text made it clear that the study was designed to answer questions about what elements of job offers encourage diversity, to identify common characteristics of the job offers examined, and to create insights about diversity management issues in the geographic context. In this case, meaning Poland. So that's an example of how, even though the original article doesn't present things in the explicit terminology of, oh, here's a research question that we're trying to answer, you can glean this information from other sources. And it's really going to depend on the article and kind of the journal's editor and policies there, whether they actually write them out or not. A recent article that I myself had published, I originally had research questions in there, and the editor relayed some peer review that said, this reads like a social science article, which of course APA is used for a lot of social science, said, make it more casual. If you have the questions, that might scare away some of our readers. And, it wasn't something that I was invested in, oh, it must be this way. So I just took those out. And so we had implicit rather than explicit research questions. So if you find yourself in the situation, you really want to study a particular article, but it doesn't give you these formally written out explicit research questions, if you can find the implicit questions and then state that at here, that's not a problem. So that's all the time we have for today. I hope that this was helpful to you. We have a lot more webinars coming up, including many brand new ones in the EdD in Progress series. And again, I encourage you to check out the Writing Center website to see our full catalog of webinars including ones that might happen to coincide with your courses. That's it. Thank you for joining us during the lunch hour. Have a great rest of your day.